Okay, well, hopefully you've seen part 1. We promised part 2 wouldn't be that good. Hopefully it was all right. And we really have the stragglers now. We joked about part 2 being all the less desirable questions to address, but we have a part 3. So I don't know what that tells you, but yeah, no, we had a lot of questions and a lot of really good questions. So we don't like to make these episodes run too much over 20-minute mark. So yeah, part 3. All right, next question's from, you got way too many things going on in your name, so I'm just going to skip it. Will you be testing Radeon 7? Absolutely. If so, do you think it may be between the 1080 Ti and 2080 Ti? Probably, based on what we know so far. Again, we're just guessing here. So we're sort of guessing. I mean, we've got information from AMD on expected performance around 30% faster than Vega 64, which would certainly put it on par at least with the 1080 Ti. Probably a little bit ahead, which would put it on par with the RTX 2080. So yeah, to answer the question, yes, we'll be getting one for testing. AMD has said we'll definitely be getting one, and not a definitely you'll be getting one, but it'll be a week after the reviews go live. We'll be getting one with plenty of time to get our review done, so that's awesome news. We'll probably provide a super in-depth day one review, day one coverage, and I think, yes, it will be between the 1080 Ti and RTX 2080 Ti. All right, next question. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tim's nodding off a bit.
Oh, come on.
If I buy a new GPU, should I take it apart and replace the thermal paste? I've seen videos where they say it's a good idea, but what about warranties and stuff? My take on this would be, if you need to replace the thermal paste on a brand new graphics card, it's a rubbish graphics card. I've not seen an instance where you need to do that. I have done it plenty of times because we take it apart, clean it up, take some B-roll, put it back together, and I do the thermal testing beforehand. Then I replace it with really high quality thermal paste. Almost always the temperatures are identical or within a degree. So certainly not worth doing. Maybe there's some like budget cards you get that have that real nasty dry thermal paste that's not so great. Maybe it makes sense there, but then real budget nasty cards, or not nasty cards, but budget cards using nasty thermal paste generally aren't super fast and don't generate loads of heat, so it'd be a waste of time anyway. Probably not worth doing it because, yeah, even warranties and all that stuff aside, if you do damage the card, that's just a whole pain in the backside that you wouldn't have had to deal with otherwise, and it's for no real gain. So not worth doing. If you buy a second-hand GPU, and I don't know, it's whatever particular model it may be, you go read a few reviews, watch a few videos, and they're claiming thermals are 5 degrees or more cooler than what you're getting. Take note of the ambient temperature. But yeah, if you think it's running much hotter than it should be, then maybe it's worth taking the second-hand card apart, reapplying some thermal paste, and see if that improves things for you. Or it could just be a whole heap of dust in the heatsink or whatever. So yeah, I mean, for new cards though, definitely not worth doing. Okay, next question, GPU related. Is there any difference between the RX 400 series and the RX 500 series apart from the clock speeds? In other words, would an RX 480 at 1.4 gigahertz be equal to an RX 580 at the same speed? That's basically what the question is. The RX 500 series, for the most part, with the exception of the RX 550 and the dodgy RX 560 version that they quietly released, with the exception of those two, it's a refresh. It's a Polaris refresh. So your RX 470 became the 570 and the 480 became the 580 with a factory overclock. So AMD said that it was on the new FinFET, 14 nanometer FinFET process. Basically, the process had just matured, so they were getting better yields, and therefore they could run at slightly higher clock speeds. But my 480 card overclocked just as well as my 580 card, and so on and so forth with the other ones. So yeah, I mean, there's no real differences. Oh, but sorry, I'll just quickly add in one last bit. When you're saying at the same frequency, would they be equal? Yes, absolutely identical in every metric.
All right, Alex asks, do you think OLED monitors will make LCDs obsolete when the tech improves? If so, how long will this be, or do you think there'll always be a place for LCD? Yeah, I mean, OLED right now is better in a lot of ways than LCD. The main problem is the burn-in that you get. So especially for a monitor, things like the taskbar or any applications that you use a lot. Say you just use it for Chrome, things like, the address bar will start to burn in over time because the OLED elements themselves degrade at different rates depending on how often you use them. So if they can solve that and you can get an OLED with no burn-in, then yeah, there'd be every reason to produce that over an LCD, especially for high-end monitors, because OLEDs are more expensive to manufacture. So yeah, that would be when it would make it obsolete. How long will this be? I think it's actually not solvable for OLEDs. I'm not sure they can get it to a point where burn-in is completely not an issue. We saw with plasmas over time, back when plasmas were a thing, that early models would burn in a lot more than sort of the final generation models would, but it was still an issue for the last models. So I think there'll always be a place for LCD, particularly with technology like micro LED coming out that basically has some of the advantages of OLEDs, like deeper blacks, per pixel local dimming. So I think eventually that will actually supersede OLED and we'll get this sort of better LCD technology in the future and go from there. All right, Steve, here's a question for you from YouTube. Was the recent 1050 Ti versus RX 570 video, where it shows the 570 demolishing the 1050 Ti, a stab at NVIDIA for not supplying you with a 2060?
I saw a couple of these comments and well, not having a go at this person who asked it, it's a fair enough question, I suppose. I even addressed it in the video because I thought at the end of the video, I know this is going to come up straight after we did that RTX 2060 thing. Look, these videos, these 36 game benchmark videos are in the planned weeks ahead of time. It takes a seriously long time to test a graphics card at 2 resolutions in 36 games. Like, I'll sit there for like 16 hours and just benchmark for like 2 or 3 days in a row to do one card. So it's not like, they shafted us with the RTX 2060 and I was like, that's it, Tim. We're doing this comparison. And then a day and a half later, it was done. It took me like a day and a half just to edit it. So no, that wasn't the intention there. That video, as I said, was massively overdue. The last time I did that video was the 1050 Ti versus the RX 470. So the 570 I always compared with the 1060 3GB, which upset a lot of the AMD fans. But the reason I did that was very simple. They cost the same amount. In fact, the RX 570 was more expensive than the 3GB 1060 back when I made my comparison. So that's why I did it. But now you can get the RX 570 typically for less than a 1050 Ti. So it doesn't make sense to compare it with the much more expensive 3GB 1060 anymore. Having said that, because a few people did ask for it, and I know they are, you've got a lot, that $200 price bracket, that $150 to $200 price bracket is very crowded now. You've got the 570, the 580, the 3GB 1060 snuck in there, and then you have the GTX 1050 Ti. So there's 4 cards sort of occupying that zone, and then a bit above it you have the 6GB 1060. So I'm going to do a video including all of those cards, including the 6GB 1060 in the next few days, and then I will get our much delayed RTX 2060 video out. But yeah, no, that was not a video having a go at NVIDIA. It was planned ahead of time, and it was always going to happen. I haven't done like a GTX 1050 versus RX 560 video for a while. Those two are very evenly matched and you could go either way. I just get whichever one's cheaper, but yeah, I haven't revisited them with updated drivers. Okay, I'll get to this one as well. Why are some of AMD's GPUs aging better than their NVIDIA counterparts? Good question. I think there's 2 reasons for this. One is AMD generally offers more VRAM with their GPUs, which helps them age a bit better. Kind of self-defeating for AMD there because they have to charge more for the card or their margins are cut into. And for quite some time, the people buying the cards new don't really benefit from the new VRAM. We're going to see that with the Radeon 7. 16GB is massive overkill right now, but you can expect it to give it an advantage over the RTX 2080 in 3, 4, 5 years. And at that point, well, whoever bought them new is probably looking at moving on. And then the other reason is kind of comes under that fine wine banner, which the VRAM thing does as well, but this one is less impressive. It's basically sloppy drivers. I said in a question earlier, AMD's been doing a fantastic job with their drivers recently, arguably better than NVIDIA. So yeah, we're not seeing those consistent gains like we were for a while from them because they haven't got ground to make up now. They're sort of hitting the ground running straight out of the gate with their GPUs now. And that ties into another question we answered earlier. I think the Radeon 7 will perform pretty well right off the bat, and we won't see 10 or whatever % gains in certain titles that have been out for a while. So yeah, basically comes down to VRAM and driver development. The VRAM thing will continue, and I think they're pretty well on top of the drivers at this point.
True Benchmarks asks us, if a FreeSync monitor worked with an AMD card, it should work with an NVIDIA card too, right? Or are those screen issues NVIDIA mentioned something that can be at the driver level that they won't fix? I know in a previous video you said that statement by them was Bologna, but for the sake of curiosity, what do you think?
Did you use the word Bologna?
It's what's written there.
Might have meant Bologna or something.
Who knows?
Unless it's something, it might be something that us Aussies don't quite get.
Who knows? So
moving on.
The question is, if a FreeSync monitor works with an AMD card, should it work with an NVIDIA card too, right? Assuming that NVIDIA's implemented adaptive sync properly, then yes, both monitors should work exactly the same, whether it's an AMD card or an NVIDIA card. If NVIDIA hasn't implemented it properly for whatever reason, then yes, it then would be a situation where it wouldn't work on NVIDIA cards, right? And that would be entirely NVIDIA's fault for stuffing that up. Are they something that is at a driver level that they won't fix? I don't think it's a driver problem, the things that they showed. I think they're problems with the panels themselves. These are panels that have just been manufactured poorly. They didn't get the adaptive sync implementation right in the panel itself. I know there's a few LG panels that they were showing off that were basically the examples of things like flickering, dipping to black, those sorts of things are known issues with those particular monitors. So I don't think that's a FreeSync issue. I just think that's an issue with LG not making those monitors properly. I'm not calling it LG specifically because there's a few other monitors as well that have those issues. But again, it's not an issue with FreeSync itself. It's just those monitor manufacturers doing a bad job. And personally, if I ever saw those issues with the monitor that I'd purchased, I would either take it back and get something else or RMA it because it's basically just a fault. It shouldn't happen. It's not an inherent issue with FreeSync. So yeah, those are really my thoughts with that. I think NVIDIA's kind of blown up that issue a bit to sort of portray it as these issues are issues with all FreeSync monitors, which definitely isn't the case. So yeah.
Okay, Super MX says, what is the best time of year to consider upgrading a GPU? In the beginning or middle or in the end of the year? Depends on the year. Depends on what's coming out when. Typically, well, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to answer. It depends on the year. It also depends on what you're after and what's released. So if you're waiting for an affordable or mid-range graphics card, then the end of last year wouldn't have been worth waiting for because we only got $500 plus graphics cards. And it just depends on what you want. Like, used GPUs are great now. You can get Pascal, Polaris GPUs quite cheap, quite a good discount there. But yeah, you can always wait. You can always, like, I wouldn't be kicking yourself if you buy a GPU now and then in 5 months there's something that's a bit better for a slightly better price because you've got 5 months of fun gaming in and you'll get many more in.
Yeah.
So I did a video recently about why now is a good time for gamers to build a gaming PC. And I talked about the fact that there's always something new coming. And if we know that, say we knew that Navi was coming in a month and it was suspected to offer a 20% performance boost over what we have now for the same price, then that would be worth waiting for. But right now we don't have that information. So you've just got to gauge what information is available at the time and what we're expecting. And be careful to read too much into rumors and things like that. Try to get confirmed information. Interesting question here. Do you think these rumors are killing AMD's progress? Personally seeing this kind of practice in online media and forums just for AMD. Okay, so I think it's what he's saying is the rumors are mostly focused on AMD product launches. And that makes people's expectation way too high. But if a product doesn't deliver as the rumor suggests, those so-called fans, AMD fans, kill themselves. Fairly extreme. I don't see rumors for Intel for their upcoming 10nm products. pretty heavily memed on. Can we stop these rumoring practices? Okay. Well, I assume this is all in relation to Tim's sort of derailing of the hype train for CES.
Yeah. All right, yeah.
So Tim really, really, really wanted to avoid talking about this because he has not enjoyed it one bit. Wishes he didn't touch it with the 20-foot pole. Seems people can be quite ridiculous about these things, and I guess this is sort of what this question's about. Well, all right. I know Tim doesn't really want to talk about this kind of stuff much, so I'll talk about it. Tim can quietly sit there in pain.
Yeah, I'll sit over here.
Okay, so we got some rumors about what AMD's lineup was going to be for the Ryzen 3000 series. We said they looked too good to be true. In some ways, that was taken out of context. Like, it looked too good to be true for one. They were being announced at CES. That seemed far too good to be true and unreasonable, unrealistic. What you were getting for the prices in the current market seemed unlikely. And then it wasn't just like Tim wasn't saying, you're not getting 16 cores, that's too good to be true. That wasn't what he was saying at all. He wasn't focusing on any one thing. It was the package deal that seemed too good to be true. So I guess one way to put this for people who don't quite get the question, or I'll just give it an example. So let's say there were no rumors at all. There was just guys talking on forums, dreaming and stuff, and there was no speculation video put out there. Nothing that got everyone talking about and everyone reported on as this is what's happening at CES. Say there was none of that. And AMD came out at CES and did exactly what they did, which was show an 8-core part with better efficiency than the 9900K, matching the performance of the 9900K. Albeit in Cinebench, we don't really know gaming numbers and stuff yet, but that in itself is very, very impressive. Now, if they had to come out and shown that in productivity they can match the 9900K or slightly beat it, at unknown clock speeds, it may get better than that. With the same amount of cores, that's huge. I would have walked away from that like blown away, which I still was anyway. But I think just about everyone would have walked away from that pretty blown away. There would have been some people saying, oh, AMD's gone to 7 nanometers and they can only just match, Intel on 14. That's all a bit silly because they didn't just do that. The efficiency was much better. So it was impressive. And I think everyone would have walked away from that impressed. Now, if the rumor had been accurate and it had been at CES, AMD will tease a product, an 8-core product that can match Intel core for core, similar frequency or whatever, and it will match it in performance and be more efficient. I think everyone would be like, oh, that seems awesome. Not too good to be true, but that seems awesome, and I'll believe it when I see it. And then we see the demo and we're like, holy crap, that's amazing. So it was hyped up in a way that it delivered. I think that's the best way to hype something up, in a way that it delivers. Except everyone was expecting a whole slew of Ryzen 3000 processors with potentially pricing, specifications, core count, all that, and they were expecting your 16-core part to be unveiled and just absolutely annihilate the 900K. And don't tell me they weren't expecting that, because every single YouTuber basically that parroted the leak was like, Intel's doomed. You saw all the headlines, and that's what AMD fanboys wanted us to do, was make a video about how doomed Intel is, which still may be the case in the way that they think it's going to happen. And we know the 16-core part is possible. It's very possible, but that doesn't mean AMD should do it right now, and it doesn't mean they will. So they're going to read the market conditions, they're going to play things the way they were going to play them. Basically, they know what they can do. They know what they have at their disposal, that they know, and they will execute in whatever way is best for them. And coming out right now with a 16-core part, which they were suggested to do at CES, would have been a terrible move, because it neuters your Threadripper sales, it kills your Ryzen 2nd generation sales. Who's going to buy the 2700X or any of those parts? Who's going to buy the 6-core parts when we're getting a better 6-core part for next to nothing? So it would have just effectively killed Ryzen sales, and it would have killed Threadripper sales. So they were never, ever, ever going to do that. It was never going to happen. And we knew it was never going to happen for a few reasons. And Tim put them in a video foolishly and copped endless heat for trying to tell you guys the truth.
That's fine.
But Tim never said that 16 cores wasn't possible or wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the question here was, do those rumors potentially harm AMD in the end? And I think it's possible it is, because you get
it's definitely, well, it does way more bad than good.
Yeah, because you get hype for a product that, they didn't show and potentially doesn't exist.
There were a lot of comments on our YouTube videos going, oh, AMD underdelivers again, underdelivers again, AMD fails, this and that. We're thinking, this is amazing.
You look at the tech and you go, yeah, okay, that's actually a pretty significant step forward considering how far behind a 2700X is compared to a 9900K.
Yeah.
Then the very next generation, they have matched that on performance and done it at a much lower power. That's very impressive. But because people are expecting 16 cores to be unveiled right there and then, that people are like, oh, well, they didn't show a 16 core part, so that's not what I was expecting. That's not as impressive.
Yep.
So yeah, I think these leaks do have an impact on these companies and their launch plans, and I think that internally AMD might have not been too happy with some of those things.
You think? So anyway,
but it's not just AMD. Like, we've seen that from time to time with Nvidia's leaks as well last year. A lot of people, even without leaks, people were sort of getting hyped up for this major unveil of things, and you could see videos pretty much every week of people sort of speculating and guessing and leaking information about what those cards would be, and it turns out that while the 2080 Ti is faster, that the cards weren't as good value for money as people were expecting from some of that information.
Yeah.
So it happens all the time.
I mean, it's a difficult position for us because we personally don't like the leaks and rumors at all, but we get why you guys, the enthusiasts, are interested in them, get excited about them, and like to discuss them. And I think having a healthy discussion about this stuff is perfectly fine. But when someone says one thing and then, we got information and we were told exactly what would be in the keynote and what would be announced and what would be teased and what would be shown. And when we sort of go, hey guys, like, we had a lot of viewers asking us for our opinion on this and we knew the answer. We couldn't say who told us or how we knew, but we could just say, well, temper your expectations because this ain't happening. And then Tim got tons of hate for that. So we've learnt a lot from it. Rather than sort of dig into these rumors and sort of prove aspects of them right or wrong, we're just going to give our opinion and say what we think is going to happen. I think is probably the best way to go about
That'll be
it.
a different, whether we leak or not, who knows, share information relating to these rumors and everything.
Yeah,
we're not sure, but certainly we will do it in a bit of a different way, I think.
Yeah, we've definitely learnt from it, and we will tackle it in a slightly different way. It's kind of annoying that we have to, because I don't think that Tim did anything wrong, but just from the reaction, it was just something that we didn't really want to deal with.
Yep.
So that's that. Okay, thank you for watching. I am going to wrap this up real quick because my arms are starting to stick to the table. I'm over it. Done. Too long with the Q&A, too hot. But yeah, thank you for everyone who submitted a question. We had, like I said, about over 300, I think it was.
Had to really cull them down this time, which was,
Yeah.
And even then, we've still got 3 parts. So, yeah.
So, very good. So, thank you again. Feel free to like. Feel free to subscribe. You can subscribe to Patreon.
Yep, that's right. Support us there.
Yep, support us there. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one. So, I'm your host, Steve.
I'm your host, Tim, even though I never say that in my videos. I'll see you in the next one.